Welcome to Accelerate Your Wealth, a podcast by Rebecca Robertson, founder and director of Evolution Financial Planning. We hope you enjoy the show, and please feel free to leave us a review. It really does help. Feel free to connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn and Instagram, or head over to www.rebeccarobertson.co.uk or our sponsor, Evolution Financial Planning, for regulated advice on www.evolutionfinancialplanning.co.uk/podcast.
And welcome to this new show. It's me, Rebecca Robertson, your host. And today we're going to be talking about pensions and when can I retire? It's one of the big questions that come up quite a lot. So clients that I talk to have lots of different pensions all over the place. They've often forgotten them. They don't know where they are, how much is in them, let alone what their fees are, what their charges are, what they're invested in, what the risk profile is, or how much they actually could retire on. So how much I can retire is the ultimate question, but unfortunately there's a lot of devil in the detail when it comes to pensions. So it's best to get pension advice from a qualified, independent qualified financial advisor, which I am one. But in this session today, obviously I am not giving independent bespoke advice. It does just depend on your personal circumstances. However, when working with an advisor, they can discuss your details, obviously personally, and go into each pension for you and review it for you. So where to start with all of this? So the first thing to do is you can go and search for those lost pensions, and you can go to a government website. So do be careful on Google when searching for Find My Pension, for example, because there's lots of different things that can come up on there. So let me find you the correct website. The way that you know you're definitely on a government website is it will have www.gov.uk at the top, and obviously the rest of it should look like the rest of the normal government branding. You can go straight to the bottom and see that it's a government website, and on this particular one you'll see Find My Pension contact details. You start and you can press the big Start Now button, and then you can basically put in your work scheme where you worked, and they'll be able to find some of your old schemes for you. The other thing that you can do is you can actually call them. So there's a phone number on that page which starts with 0800. So do go to the right website. Do be careful what you search on Google, because you could be bringing up absolutely anything that might look like it's good, but it might not be. So that's the first tip for you. So if you want to find your pensions, that's how you go and do that. So the second thing to do is then add up how much all those pensions in the total value are worth. Now, for some people, that can be a few £1,000s. For others, it can be adding up to maybe over into the 100,000s. But knowing where they are and how much they're worth is just the first step. Now, what I'm going to be showing you for the rest of today's little show is how much do I actually need to retire, right? So how much do I need to have a comfortable life? That really does depend on your current lifestyle, and it really does depend on how long you've got until you plan to retire. From there, we have to assume how long you're going to live for, and that can average between around 85 to 95, depending on the client's age and their setup. So you can assume your own death, that sounds awful, maybe around 91. Some people want to go longer to 100. You never know. My husband thinks he'll live forever. So once you know how much they're worth, then it's a case of looking, okay, well, how much do I want in that time? Let's say I'm going to retire at 65. How much do I need to live on at 65? And you have to really think ahead at that point. What are you actually going to be doing at that stage? Are you going to be wanting to really chill out and knit tea cozies, or are you going to be wanting to be traveling the world? Do you want your standard of living to be very similar? So assuming you won't have a mortgage, so I'm assuming your mortgage has been paid by this point, assuming that you don't have children in the home, so you're no longer having to pay for maybe childcare costs, you're no longer having to pay for, assuming at 65 you're not having any more children. I certainly wouldn't be having any more, let alone at 65. And assuming that you're not having to pay for university fees, for example, or any additional costs like that. So sort of you're at that phase of life where you really only have yourself to think about. The issue being is that you've spent a lot of the last 20 to 40 years possibly looking after children and other people, and you've not actually put yourself first. And that's where your pension definitely comes in to help you in your later life. It's there to help you in the later years when you do want to take a bit of a step back. So think about what you want your lifestyle to look like. Now, if you're on a really high salary and you're sort of talking 100,000, say, the general rule of thumb is that you have 60% of your earnings of when you were working. Now, for some people, 60 grand a year in retirement is actually like too much. I don't necessarily need that much. Can you say too much? But when it is looking at pensions, you have to have an awful lot of money in a pension to be able to have, 60 grand a year salary that's going to last you potentially, we're talking, say, 65, 75, 85, 95. That's another 30 years of 60 grand a year. You have to have an awful lot of money in a pension to do that. You're probably over the pension allowance. Everybody has a total pension allowance. It's currently over £1 million for most of us, not something to worry about. However, for those that have had high earnings and put into pensions for a long time, you get taxed basically over that amount. And you should speak to that in more detail with your financial advisor. You're more than happy for you to contact us via www.evolutionfinancialplanning.co.uk, who are our show's sponsor. So going back to pensions, so if you're on 20 grand a year, same applies. You'd roughly expect around 60% of what you were earning when you were employed to then be receiving in salary, around 60%. Now, but some people, they weren't necessarily earning a huge amount, but they do in their first 5-10 years actually want to earn more because in their retirement, because they want to have a better lifestyle. They want to go on those holidays and the cruises and such like. But when they're in their maybe late 70s, etc., they don't necessarily want to do so much. Now, this income coming in does actually later on does pay for care home fees if that's necessary. Later on, it does provide, possibly if you want to pay for someone to help you in the home, have additional care or cleaners or help around the house. So it's not just about lifestyle in terms of going on those flash holidays. It's making sure that you're taken care of in your much later life. Now, people don't know how to reverse engineer that back. I mean, the reason being is because it's based on quite a few different assumptions. Now, what kind of assumptions? Well, one, we have to assume a certain pot of money to start off with. So we want to find out what those pensions that you've currently got are worth. Then we have to assume a certain growth rate. So a financial advisor will get a quote or an illustration from your pension company, and they will have a different range of pension predictions. And what we should do is we should use those predictions as the assumed growth. But every company is different, and regulation means that we have to keep those assumptions very, very low. We can't be too astronomical. So that's the first lot of assumptions. And then the second lot is inflation. Now, we all know we're in 2022 as I'm recording this. Inflation is astronomically high. We're close to sort of 10% mark. We're possibly going to get as high as 13% in the next few months. But by next summer, we should be back down closer to the 5% mark. So although inflation is still really high, most financial advisors, even at this time, will use an average of anywhere between 2.5% and 3%. And they should use what's the FCA guidelines, which is currently around the 3% mark. Because we're looking at the bigger picture, not nuclear year by year or month by month. We're looking at the big picture over a longer period of time. So that in mind, you have to assume those things. Then we have to sort of say, okay, well, how much do we want to be drawing the money out by? So there's normally a percentage that you draw the money out by each year. And we don't really want to be doing any more than 4 or 5%. Otherwise, it will run out. But again, it does depend on the client's age, how long they've got to retire in terms of building the money up, and how long they've got in retirement from when they wish to retire or can retire. Not necessarily wish to retire, but can retire. So I had a client recently. She had 3 pensions. She wanted to retire in around 5 years' time. And based on what she was currently paying in and she currently had in place, based on medium assumptions and based on a growth rate and a 3% inflation rate, she'd need to be putting in about another £800 a month into her pension because she only had a 5-year more window. Now, she couldn't afford that. That was too much for her. So we then had to work out what she could afford, and that then gave us an outcome as to when she could retire. Now, I call this lifestyle financial planning. This process that I'm describing, if I'm working with a one-to-one IFA client where I'm reviewing pensions and such like, we do look at projections. But for other people that are just thinking, okay, well, actually, I don't know what to do with my money. I've got pots here and I've got pots there. It's not just pensions. It could be other things. We can bring those pots all together, whether it's ISAs or bonds, etc., and build them into a plan to then work out, if we draw that money out at a certain rate, when will it run out? So I'm just going to give you an example, just in a pension example, so that you can see some real figures in real life. Those that are on the podcast, I do apologise. You can go onto my YouTube channel and see this video, but I will describe it as I'm going. Okay, so what you can see here is a calculator, and we have £100,000 in the initial pot and an assumed growth rate of 4.5%. It does depend on the client's attitude to risk as to potential returns. Please bear in mind that past performance is not an indication of future performance. And then we have an assumed inflation rate, which I've done 3%. So the actual real return rate is 4.5%. So we have to take into account there might be charges involved with this particular pension pot, but the regulation doesn't allow us to increase this assumed net growth rate because we want to go on the side of caution. But I will show you in a moment, if we increase that, what would that look like, just to give us a comparison. I've done a drawdown amount of 4%, and this particular client is 47. They're going to retire at 67, so that's actually closer to what their state retirement age would be, and they would receive hopefully a state pension, which you can check yourself if you do have a state pension on the Government Gateway portal. If you log into your Government Gateway portal account, it will show down the left-hand side what your allowances are and if you need to top anything up. So it's very, very important. It's worth looking at and seeing what you might need to add to for your pension, your state pension. So if I was to calculate this particular client is putting £100 a month, and she's going to increase that with the retail price index. So that's an assumed growth, usually again around the 3% mark. This will mean that she will get a pension pot in 20 years' time will be worth, so it's 100,000 now, it will become 162,000 with just putting £100 a month in. And she would have, for 32 years, she would have an income monthly at £542. So as you can see, even with a pension pot of 162,000, it sounds like it's a lot of money. We don't want to assume that she's going to mean that you're going to be having quite a lot, because actually it's only £542 a month. If we was to increase this monthly amount, let's just say it's closer to £250 a month, so it's going to stretch a little bit more, £150 a month, or maybe you meant that if you put a little bit in, your employer might put a little bit more in. It means that the pension pot becomes £204,000 and the income then goes to £682. So it's giving you that little bit extra each month. Now we could increase the drawdown amount from 4% to 5%, so that it actually doesn't last as long. So at this point she's 67, and it's now going to become £852, and it will last 24 years instead of 27 years. So in this example, if we count upwards, she's going to be 77, 87, so 87, 88, 89, 90, 91. So that's possibly quite comfortable for where the client might feel they're at. If we was to then actually do a slightly higher assumed growth rate, and I'm going to take that to 6% returns, because we've still got 20 years before we're talking this is happening, we might increase the risk profile that has the potential but not guaranteed to increase the rates of return. It would then mean that we're doubling the net real return against inflation from 1.5% to 3%. So it means that we've got a higher possibility of higher returns. So this is an assumption. It then brings the pension pot to 263,000, still with a 5% drawdown percentage. It would mean it would last 31 years, so actually quite a bit longer, and actually would have £1,098 in income per month. So it makes a huge difference where the money is and how it's invested makes a big difference. So even with only having 100,000 in the pension, putting £250 a month in would give you £1,000 a month, or close to £1,100 a month. Now, if I increase that to 5.5, because we don't necessarily need it to last 31 years, if I put it to 5.5, it brings it down to 27 years that money would last. And it's then £1,200, just over the £1,200 mark, and the pension pot comes closer to 263,000. Now, this is on quite small numbers. There are obviously people earning a lot more than this and have bigger pension pots than this. And again, it doesn't matter how much is in there or what you're dealing with. It's all about where it's invested and how you're getting those returns. As you can see from the figures that I've calculated, how the money is invested. And therefore the returns that you're getting, how the money is invested in terms of how you're charged, is crucial as to what returns you get over the long term. Now, that's how you know if you have enough or not. So I hope that helps. The first step for you to go and do is to go and dig out those pension pots. If you wish to have a review of your pensions, then please do contact our sponsors, which is Evolution Financial Planning, www.evolutionfinancialplanning.co.uk. Equally, however, if you are looking to have just some cash flow projections done in regards to pensions or any of the pots of your money, then we can look at doing what's called a lifestyle financial planning session, which is where we take all those pots and we find out how much they could be worth, and therefore how much you can utilize them in your retirement. And you don't have to do that in a regulatory process. We can just look at the projections on its own. And that you just go to www.rebeccarobertson.co.uk, and we'll pop some links down below so you can click on those. Equally, however, if you are looking to have a general spruce up of your finances, when you go to evolutionfinancialplanning.co.uk, you'll see there we have it might not be actually on our homepage just yet as you're listening to this. I'm not sure if it's live yet. It's quite fresh, but I'll pop a link in the show notes, and you'll find something called a financial assessment, a financial well-being assessment. This is where we ask you around 10 questions about your finances, and it will send you like an assessment summary email to give you a bit of a summary of where you're at and what you could start to look to prioritise. And there's also a free chapter of my book there, which shows around the different levels of hierarchy of what to look at first with your finances. And I do this just to help people to get started with their finances, to inform them so they can make some decisions and move things forward for themselves. So I hope that's been helpful for you today. Shows that are coming up in the next coming weeks is what to do with your finances in a recession. Can I lose all my money? Is a question that around, the market crashing and the market risk at the moment. So that's a show in a few months' time. And we're also going to be doing something around market volatility and decision making, or indecision, I should say, that people make around their finances. A lot of people sitting and not making decisions at the moment. And that's because they're scared, and which is understandable. So we're going to be doing a session on that. So if you've enjoyed today, please do leave us a review, and we'd love to hear from you either by emailing us at rebecca@rebeccarobertson.co.uk, or whatever platform you're on. Please do leave a comment and let us know how what you thought of today's show. Sending you lots of love, and take care.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Accelerate Your Wealth. For further help or to connect with Rebecca directly, please head over to the website www.rebeccarobertson.co.uk, where you can find further information on our planner, book, and how to further maximise your wealth. Our sponsor, Evolution Financial Planning, for regulated advice on pensions, investments, mortgages, insurances, on www.evolutionfinancialplanning.co.uk/podcast.